With God, there is always more. More love, more life, more freedom. Welcome to Zoweh's Exploring More with Michael Thompson. C.S. Lewis once wrote, "Our Heavenly Father has provided many delightful inns for us along our journey, but He takes great care to see that we do not mistake any of them for home." Join me and the team as we explore the kingdom together, discovering the deep truths and offering encouragement for the journey. There is always more. Welcome to the Exploring More podcast with Michael Thompson and my partner in crime, S.J. Jennings, and we are extending our Rendezvous Project special edition with Jeff and Dana Andrechyn because, frankly, there's just more to explore. There's so much more to explore when we get together as friends. This is always, S.J., our big challenge, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's always our big challenge. And our producer, Serena, man, we give her plenty of things to work with. But actually, the last episode, we closed with this very thing, right? The gold that sometimes hits the floor or put on the shelf as we talk about what kind of content that we were sharing. And so this is a great chance to share a little bit more. So Jeff and Dana, welcome back.
Thanks.
And I'd love to turn, if we can, and just jump right in to some of the sessions and some of the episodes. I think about you guys. I love that you, amongst other episodes, that you did the intimacy checkup, the session on intimacy. And Jeff, I got to say, when I see any picture or any commercial, or I see even the spine of the cover of the DVD of Mr. and Mrs. Smith, I think of you. And I've got one little inside joke for you. You ready?
Okay.
7.
7. Nice. I like that. Oh, that's good.
Anyway,
you're doing well.
Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie in that story, they're trying to kill each other.
Yeah.
They become each other's hunter and predator, actually. And in that space, their marriage is restored. Their stuff with the counselor is hilarious.
It is.
And, at our Rendezvous Projects, you've shown clips from that film, from that story. But that's one of my favorites because the intimacy checkup session, the intimacy session that you did, because Robin and I can just motor on. We can just keep going. And literally like a vehicle, SJ, it can be 10,000, 20,000 miles before we even think about changing the oil.
Right.
Yes, we can keep putting gas in it. I'm not talking about running out of gas. I'm talking about just going and going with the pace of life, this 4-letter word called busy and busyness. And so to park it and to facilitate an intimacy checkup, I'm grateful. I'm grateful we did it. And I'm so grateful that you guys did it. It's one of my favorites in the Rendezvous Project.
Oh, thank you. I love that Mr. and Mrs. Smith movie because it literally is the collision of two lives lived very separately, secretively, but had to come together, and it comes together through the Big Bang.
What's interesting is that the story is that they both work for competing spy agencies, I guess it is.
Yeah.
And so they come in with their own secrets that they can't tell each other. And then how interestingly these agencies set to pit them against each other, and that we're going to ruin each other. Our goal is to see, so how the enemy gets in between, because when they met so innocently and outside of the enemy maybe knowing that they were going to meet. And it was a love story that they found themselves in. And then the enemy gets in there and all of a sudden it's survival of the fittest,
I love that. What marriage isn't an accidental meeting?
Right?
Yeah. Accidental meeting. I remember it that way. That wasn't on my calendar that day. It wasn't speed dating. It wasn't, it wasn't like that. And so these accidental meetings, and then what you said too, is for a time they were swords out, guns out at each other.
Right.
And I love in the last episode, you guys said, Jeff, you shared what Dana and I have learned over the years is what it is to be back to back.
Yeah.
Swords out, guns out, and protecting each other's six.
Yeah.
Being there. And what are you seeing, honey? What are you seeing? And being able to weather the agency's attacks and the information that you're being given. It is the metaphor. It is the illustration, at least one of several that we want to explore in the Rendezvous Project, right? About how to overcome as a couple. How do you weather this? SJ, you had a thought.
Yeah, I just hadn't thought about it that way. I'm familiar with the movie, but I hadn't thought about the external agencies manipulating the individuals for their own purposes to have them destroy one another. And when you think about the spiritual realm, that's a reality. And listeners, if you don't know what I mean when I say that, we've done a bunch of talks and series on that on the podcast about the physical realm and the spiritual realm, the two realms, the two kingdoms. But go back and find that in one of the previous episodes. But the idea that, there's these external forces manipulating us that really want to destroy our marriage and our intimacy with one another. And then as I think about your session on intimacy that you guys did, it's really the invitation to intimacy with one another. That's the antidote to that external attack, right? So
Amen.
Jeff and Dana, as I think about your session, some of the feedback I've heard is that none of them are really formal, but the teaching is from upfront at the weekend. And then you get to session 3 with you guys, and it's the two of you together next to each other on a couch. Some of the feedback we've gotten is it was a refreshing break from sort of the teaching posture. And then it's like, okay, now we're in Jeff and Dana's living room listening to them talk about intimacy. The gentleness of that, and frankly, the intimacy of that, you guys being in that posture has been very powerful for the folks that have watched it thus far. But as you guys were preparing to talk about intimacy and preparing to share in that session, was there anything that was kind of stirred up in you, like that you hadn't talked about before or that you weren't familiar with in your stories? I mean, what did that feel like preparing for that session?
Before you guys answer that, for our audience and listeners, I just want to say, so it's session 3. Wow, intimacy. They're talking about intimacy that quickly. And I want our audience to know that, actually far widespread than just the bedroom. This is really a session on knowing and being known.
That's right.
Knowing and being known. We so associate intimacy with sex, right? Yes, that's in the Rendezvous Project. We believe that's a part of marriage and God's gift in that space. And I love how we got to go into intimacy. So back to SJ's question, I don't know that you volunteered or we assigned it.
Yeah, I think they got voluntold.
I think voluntold. I think either way, I can't remember SJ, but I think either way, we knew who had to do that session because it's a drumbeat of your marriage and it's something that you have weathered the storms well. And it's added to the intimacy that you guys share. And I love that. It's not just the rules to better sex or the guideline to better conflict resolution. I think this session is a beautiful invitation to vulnerability and something that you guys have navigated extremely well and offer that. So therefore you offer that from a very humble and sweet place.
One of the things I've found using Mr. and Mrs. Smith as a platform, when the bomb drops in your marriage, and it will, I think about those movies like Saving Private Ryan, where they're shell-shocked for a minute there and the sound changes and that person's in their own world for a minute and they're very disoriented. I've learned to come to Dana and grab her in those scenarios and look her in the eye and go, I am for you. Let's just make that really clear right now. I am for you. How do we get through this together? Because you could go to your own corner when you get shell-shocked, wondering what just happened and try to solve this problem on your own. And in that process of coming towards her and going, I am for you, that's when we go swords out together. And so getting ready for the intimacy was just being honest about the bombs that have dropped in our life. And with regard to career loss, with regard to what happened to our kids, what happened to our sometimes community, to be honest about those things and how those things actually drew us together.
Yeah, I agree. And I think knowing how we dance together through this one tool of the intimacy checklist, it's a foundation and it's an undergirding for when the storms come, and they will. You might get knocked silly for a couple of minutes and forget who am I and who are you and say things that we shouldn't say to each other, but there's an undergirding and there's a way back to, hold on, I'm sorry. Do you remember me? I remember you, So that's one thing that I love about knowing what matters to each other and merging those things, that they could be a strength for each other and to offer to the world.
So I think naturally in intimacy, we start with the sexual intimacy. That's the first draw in our marriage so often. And learning over the course of time that intimacy really expands out. Like you were saying, Michael, it's so much more just sexual intimacy. And it could be amazing understanding your wife's story and what's happened to her and entering into that, how satisfying that is, that kind of intimacy and walking together that way.
Yeah, I agree. We find over and over couples discover things about one another and one another's history before their history began, before their history as a couple began. And I think that is just one of 7 or 8 other things that we in the Rendezvous Project felt like were intimacy lanes, just a variety of different things to even see how one another see those things is a great invitation. So I want to keep talking about sessions. We're going to take a quick break. And I want to come back with another one of your sessions and talk about that. And then just share some of the things I think that make the Rendezvous Project unique from your standpoint. I'd love to hear that. So we'll be right back on the Exploring More podcast with Jeff and Dana Andrechyn and the special edition for the Rendezvous Project in just a minute.
Hey listeners, it's SJ. Just want to give you an update on upcoming events in 2021. The purpose of Zoweh events is to create a safe space where men, women, and couples can encounter God, experience Him in wonderfully intimate ways, and enter into life-changing transformation. We want to invite you to get away with God, unplug from all the noise, the busyness, and the demands of everyday routine, and invite Jesus to take you through your story. The moments or seasons in your life that He wants to heal and restore in order to shape you more fully into who you truly are. That happens over and over again throughout the Bible. Regular folks encounter an incredible God, experience His love, and they are never the same. We have 3 events coming up in 2021. March 18th through the 21st is our Heart of a Warrior Allies Advanced Weekend. April 8th through the 11th is the Women's Deepening Weekend. And then April 29th through May 2nd is the Heart of a Warrior Encounter for Men. Visit zoweh.org/events for more information.
Welcome back to the Exploring More podcast, talking about sessions of the Rendezvous Project. And our friends and part of the guide team, Jeff and Dana Andrechyn, are sharing a little bit about their heart. The intimacy was an important session, but let's talk about your other session. And there's other interviews and other things that you guys did so wonderfully, but can we talk about what else you got to offer and why that was important?
Before you do, I want to give a quick encouragement to our listeners with this intimacy idea that Jeff and Dana explored so well in the Rendezvous Project, and just say, one of the first things you think about, to your point, Jeff, is sexual intimacy. But the encouragement I want to offer is what Jeff and Dana offered in that session was the depth of intimacy emotionally and just knowing each other and being known. All of that augments the physical intimacy. So as an encouragement to that listener that's going, something wrong in the physical aspect of our intimacy and our marriage, because I feel we either aren't engaging in that, or I feel distant from him or from her. It's the emotional, spiritual, personal intimacy that we want to encourage the exploration of, which will then augment the physical aspect.
Amen.
For those of us who can't spell augment, what do you mean? Augment being...
But SJ, I noticed that most of my sex talk wound up on the cutting room floor. Did not make it in there.
It's actually on the blooper reel, bro.
Well, we have one heck of a blooper reel, because I think I talk about sex the best until I heard Joseph and Lori. Right? And I got to thinking, wow, they named parts in that session. That is unbelievable. And that's really one of the things that separates this Rendezvous Project apart, I think.
Yeah, that's funny.
Lori and Joseph.
Redeeming sex. I love that, Shay, what you said, the augmenting part being that it's these things that foster intimacy, the conversations, the time together that actually can be carried to the bedroom or wherever and to sexual intimacy. And so when we look at Joseph and Lori's offering, I agree, Jeff. There's a reason why it's this bonus session, and things in the Rendezvous Project lead to that. And all the other things, orientation, understanding the assault against your marriage, her story, your story, and the glory, right? The glory of your marriage together.
Yeah.
Those things all augment. I mean, even the Rendezvous Project itself, it's exploring all those things. And now let's talk about sex.
Yeah.
Right.
Physical.
We're a few months away from 35 years into this experiment.
It's not an experiment anymore.
And it's never going to change. My number one intimacy is that physical relationship. So we've now gotten an Airstream, and we are traveling around the country. And the idea is to get lost in the garden with her and being naked and unashamed. That is never going to change for me. But one of the things I've noticed is how you have developed over the years, and how interesting it is to get out there in the garden and to have her read me some of her poetry, and to see her talk to her friends around the fire and wonder, where did she get that wisdom from? And so we're growing together. And so we're not where we were 5 years ago, even. This intimacy checkup is finding out how she is growing and developing, and me taking it in and learning and seeing the projection of her life. She's a moving target. She's got eternity in her.
Yeah.
And so I have to assume that I have much more to learn regarding her. And it's so beautiful to come out, but I'm still focused on that's just not going to change.
Serena, cut that. Which leads to, honestly, what you were talking about. Our other session was on the glory of our lives together.
Yeah.
Really, from intimacy and knowing each other and knowing each other's stories and knowing what is it that makes us shine? What is the glory of God that's been deposited in us? And how we unearth that in one another, and how we encourage each other to walk in that. Rather than, it's so easy to default to all the things you don't do right or well, or that get on my nerves. Why is that so easy? But to be pursuing each other's glory. I see you. And I'm going to call that out. So
Dana,
that was a fun talk.
I want to spend the rest of our time talking about that, where I realized that I can default towards maybe championing or pursuing my kids' hearts that way. Them try things and let them explore and let them, succeed and fail. And it's okay. But turning to my spouse, what are you doing? Why did you do that? And not bringing this sentiment that you're talking about. What is it that God's deposited in your spouse? What's he deposited there that is yours to treasure, that's yours to partner with God to water, to cultivate, like in the garden, Jeff, like you said, to see flourish, to bring and protect it, protect it against the world and the harshness of the unholy Trinity. And so I love that all the sessions, it's like, Jeff, they move in a linear way because it's 1 to 12, right? But it also feels to me, Dana, like we're in your kitchen and watching you make something. Ingredients are going in. And it's coming out, and we're all going to enjoy that. And so when we get to the glory of your lives, I'd love for that to be the first talk. But in the linear way, before we got there, it's like, we need to talk about what's in the way of that.
Right.
We need to talk about what's come against that. And we need to talk about in your marriage, the enemy wants to use one another to diminish one another.
Right.
And God wants to partner with one another for the glory, small g, the glory of one another, and to see what we are together. If you'll continue in this lane, Jeff and Dana, I don't know anybody else that's talking about that. And I think it's one of the things that sets the Rendezvous Project apart. What do you make together that the world needs?
Yeah. When I look at our life and I think about the tragedies that we've experienced, I think I used the quote from Dickens in that session that I took her hand and we walked out of the ruined places together, that there was resurrection after the bomb had exploded. And eventually we walked out of that. And this way of looking back and thanking that bomb going off, that's what made us who we are and brought out the glory of our life, that there's this beautiful journey that a marriage takes. It experiences all those things. And now having experienced that explosion and the depths that took us to, we now have that breadth to walk with another couple going through it together. We've been there and we can say, oh, this is actually good.
Some of these certifications and trainings are painful.
They're painful.
That make you experts in flying that or sailing that or guiding that. And I think that's so well said. And it's so important.
Was it your session right before ours? I can't remember. The healing and training is what leads us to discovering the glory, That's what you said. There's the bomb, but in the bomb, there's this training that's happening and there's this healing that's going on in the secret places that the enemy doesn't see, but that God sees and that he's mining. Yeah.
Yeah. The healing is so important. There's actually 2 sessions on healing.
Right. Part 1 and part 2. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So that we understand how important it is. And there's a complexity to it, but then a simplicity as well, once you're aware of what's going on. So yeah, we love that. So what does that look like in your day-to-day life? You guys have talked a little bit about it, sort of an overview, right? Pursuing one another's glory. But do you have any recent examples of how you had to do that or had an opportunity to do that? What's that look like day-to-day practically?
I got exiled to the upstairs bedroom yesterday for snoring. And so I'm kind of a little disoriented right now. I didn't get to sleep with her last night,
Gotcha.
What is...
Well, okay. I don't know. That's kind of putting me on the spot here.
It is.
I'm going to tee it up. So what the glory of Jeff, his 7ness in the Enneagram, this trial, the bomb of COVID and early retirement. I know your story. So Jeff loves this. All of a sudden, there's uncharted maps. There's uncharted space, which Jeff goes, oh my gosh.
Yay!
And Dana goes, oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh. Right. I look at your lives, right? And this is a great example, listeners, of living in community. I see it, right? I can't not see it. So here goes Jeff on Dana, come with me on this adventure, right? And Dana's all about, she keeps Zoweh's resources accounted for. She's part of the women's team, bookkeeper. She brings organization. So, right, Dana's like, okay, where are we going? No, that's the wrong question. Would you come with me, right? And so the glory of both of you is right there, and it's getting the chance to merge, but it's got a little bending to do. So I think even in recent days, SJ, I'm not trying to answer their question. I'm trying to tee this up.
Yeah, sure.
Here's their glory. But
I actually have a thought about that as you're saying that.
What does that look like? Yeah, go ahead.
So I do love his wings, that he wants to go and fly. There is something so attractive about that because I'm the roots girl. And I think it's a great compliment that we offer each other roots and wings, So even in this exploration, this just came to my mind as you're talking, Michael. We were in St. Augustine in our RV, enjoying the beauty and being away. And we met a couple there from Oklahoma. So you're the explorer who got us there, and you're the storyteller who drew them in. And then this woman and she's just telling me her story. I'm like, I'm surprised at some of the things that she's sharing. And maybe it's my rootedness. I don't know what it is, but we enjoyed them so much that he sent Jeff a book, and we've kind of kept in touch a little bit. They're going to meet us in Tybee Island in March. They're going to drive from Oklahoma to do some camping with us. So I just think, Lord, what do you have for us out here in this exploration in the way of wings and roots? We're out there, and yet we're also inviting people to rootedness and in the kingdom. Yeah. They're believers. Anyway.
My job at the campsite is to go around and meet people and maybe tell a joke or two to get them into our campfire at night, because then I want them to meet Dana, which is the real gold in the relationship here, the real depth.
I love the idea that in this particular marriage, Jeff's ready to go and Dana's making sure he has his underwear.
That's important.
What needs to be packed and make sure that the checklist, right, is in play. And so I think it's one funny, yet it's a glorious example of what do we make together that instead of it being constraining to one another, we see it being freeing. We see it being liberating. We see it being complementary.
Yeah.
In ways that, in the words of Jerry Maguire, right? You complete me. There's a reason why people love that line and love that story. And that part of that lives on and on and on and on, because it resonates with a part of us that I want that. I want to find somebody who could complement and complete my Ezer Kenegdo, as Robin says.
Yes.
Who will fight for me and who will think of me when we're apart and even together. So I think the glory session, friends, is gold, and the invitation to even consider that there's something good in you when the world tells us that there's not. And sometimes, honestly, from church, we can feel that oppressiveness and that beating of, there's nothing good in you. No, that's not right. Christ is in me. I'm a believer. Why are you pointing at me? Why are you hitting me with that? No, I am in Christ and he's in me.
Right.
He has made this dwelling place good.
Yes.
And I am learning how to be good in him. You don't have to use that phrase every time we talk about goodness. I'm not prideful. I know who made me this way. I know who's giving me a part of his glory, and I know who's expecting me to walk.
And that this is now the truest thing about us. The truest thing about us is what God has made clean and good and redeemed and holy.
Yeah, and is restoring it. We're working back towards the garden, and the story's heading there. We know we get the garden back.
Yes. I can't wait.
Years like this make that even more appealing.
Yes.
Jeff, you had a thought? Go ahead.
We're at a great point in our life where we've gone through all of the house expansion, kids, possessions, and now getting to shed some of that and travel a little bit more lightly, but yet with greater purpose, and moving out into the unknown a little bit with more of a focus on there is more. And I think we're looking for him. And I think, if anything, if I look forward to our marriage is that, if Jesus turned the water into wine, he did that at the end of the wedding, and that the best is yet to come in our marriage. And I want to get every last drop of wine out of that bottle. I don't want to leave anything on the table. And so this idea of moving out, I want to live that he has more surprises for us in the future, that he's developed us for a reason, that we have no idea where we're going and who we're going to meet, but I'm looking forward to being surprised.
I would say that about glory too, is that there's always more to be discovered.
Yeah.
I think married couples can get into a space of, I know you. I know all about you. But we've both discovered that, oh my gosh, I didn't ever see that quite that way in you before. Or, oh my gosh, I didn't know that about you. I remember there was one couple that was with us at Rendezvous early on, and they were married for 50 years. And they're like, this will be good.
A good checkup.
A good checkup. And at the end, he's like, oh my gosh, I learned things about my wife that I had never known before because of the way we invite couples into questions and interactions and time alone with God together. So there is always more to discover together.
Oh, I love that, Dana. And one of the things that you guys do so well as we're circling the airport here and getting ready to land this, one of the things that you guys do so well is invite people to the idea that if you have the eyes to see, the ears to hear, and the heart that is willing to understand, you can move closer towards each other and be more intimate with one another, even after 35 years of marriage together. So I love that. Your stories that you guys shared. Thank you so much for joining us on the podcast and sharing your hearts. It's funny, Jeff, you were talking about shedding things and traveling more lightly. And I know there's a story in there about loading the Airstream that you guys could share in regards to your glory.
We're going camping in the woods for 7 days. In the woods, just me and her out there in the Smoky Mountains. And so, my Airstream is packed to the gills. I have literally 100 pounds before I exceed max gross weight. And so as I'm loading up Dana's material and things for the trip, I noticed that for 7 days in the woods, she has 16 hangared items. 16 hangared items.
Yeah. I layered.
No, you layered after I challenged you on that. I said, honey, where are we going to go with all these clothes? And so then I only had to take 8 hangared items out, but I noticed that those 8 hangared items were layered. You just simply you just simply put them on the same one. Yeah. So again, yes, traveling lightly, but with purpose. Well, so I'll leave it at that. There's a lot more to mine there, guys.
I did want to share, even with our friends in Charlottesville who were going through this, they've been married for 40 years. It'll be 41 years. And I don't know that they've ever done a marriage weekend together. And so they've been doing the Rendezvous as part of the launch team. And I was asking them, what do they think so far? Mm-hmm. And my friend said, it's been great to do the intimacy checkup and the Enneagram stuff, because it's been a way for us to connect in ways that we haven't in a very long time, and to discover things about each other. And then she said, even her husband said, when she shared one of her stories, oh my gosh, that explains so much.
That's great. And then I got a text from one of the guide team members who said, we just watched your intimacy session and my wife gets Zoweh now. I've gone to these retreats by myself, but I've failed miserably at coming home and trying to explain what I just experienced without her. And these videos brought her into the message of Zoweh and what's going on and why I'm so excited.
Yeah. As we wrap up, you two, what falls on my heart so gently from God is that why we created this was so that the Rendezvous Project for couples could become the Rendezvous Practice. Mm-hmm. That this journey, whether it's a weekend with other friends, whether it's weekly with a small group together or via Zoom, or whether it's just you and your spouse taking on the videos, the participant guides, and walking with God together in that way, that the Rendezvous Project would become a Rendezvous Practice, and that you would be called and summoned and wooed by the song of God to come away from the busy and come and dance, come and hold, come and remember. And then what I love what you guys do, dream together. From here, to rally desire and raise the longing and permission. I'll hold those so gently if you'll tell me, sweetheart. Yes. What is it that you long for, that you would love to do, that I can help you do that? So conversations, exploration, history, all of those things, that there's a practice that we hope the Rendezvous Project sets up for a couple. So Andrechyn, you're awesome. Can't wait for we've got some stuff in Charlotte coming up. We're going to get together. We got the Women's Deepening Weekend. Dana talking about so many good environments that we're hopeful to create for people to connect with God and each other. So love doing this with you guys.
Us too.
And same here. And this is what redemptive community is. You guys bring out the best in us. We love you.
Yeah, I love you too. So thanks, friends and allies, for joining us. SJ, you want to tell them what to do?
If you've got any questions or want to connect with the Andrechyn, send us an email, exploringmore@zoweh.org. We'd love to hear from you there. Mm-hmm. Check out the Rendezvous Project. Go to the rendezvousproject.com and zoweh.org for more information about upcoming events. If you would leave us a rate and a review on your podcast platform of choice, we'd love that. It helps us to be found and helps to get the message out.
Yeah, till next time, continue to explore with God, because there's always more with God.
Yes.
See you next time.
We hope you have enjoyed this episode of Exploring More. The landing page for this podcast is zoweh.org/podcast. That's ZOWEH.org/podcast, where you can find the show notes and various platforms to which we broadcast. You can also find us and the Life of More by visiting Zoweh on YouVersion Bible app, Right Now Media, our Facebook page, and Zoweh on Instagram and Twitter. Remember, with God there is always more, and you were made for more.